there, everybody. My name is Chris, and this is All Decks Welcome. Ravnica is a plane that means a lot to Magic players. Its lore is well loved, Wizards turned it into a D&D setting, major cards for various formats have been printed in each set, and for a lot of players I know personally, it was the plane that helped them best define what kind of Magic player they are. The question of what guild you are means so much to Magic players because learning how to play something like Control or Tempo through Dimir or Azorius cards can really help someone find an identity to better hone their playstyle and deck building around. My brother learned how much he loves blue-red spells thanks to the Izzet and their heavy synergy around instants. My roommate still has the Sovereign that he built one of his first decks around, and the Golgari cards like Deathrite Shaman helped him find a love of midrange that got him into Jund when he wanted to play Modern. Then there's me. My first love was Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Mono Green and colorless was where I started my personal journey as a Magic player, and trying to get away from that was difficult to say the least. I tried Gruul, Selesnya, Golgari, and Simic, and in every case I felt like I was splashing color into the same green decks I always built. And then someone came to collect on a debt, a promise I'd made to play something more interactive, more mid-range. This video is basically me reminiscing about when I first looked into building Black-White Commander and got a lecture on Teysa, or Zov Scion. And that seems like a proper place to start. Her first printing and the second most popular one for Commander. Normally I want this channel to stay away from pure Commander discussion, but anytime we touch on legendary creatures it has to be a major mention to say the least, if not the majority of the conversation. And this lady is both a combo piece along with a massive synergy card. It's definitely a fitting card for the format. 3 mana isn't a hard goal to get a card on board, and a 2-3 body isn't totally irrelevant. Like most of the Orzhov though, she isn't looking to dirty her own hands, and instead prefers watching her underlings pass away, harvesting the spirits of any black creature you control and turning them into 1/1 white creature tokens. She can then sacrifice 3 white creatures to exile any creature on the board, proving the dominance over life and death that the guild is so well known for. This creates a lot of play space for aristocrat style decks that we'll touch on soon, but first we need to address why it is I got a lecture about her from my friend trying to make me stop playing ramp in Commander. When you find yourself at desperate times, you can kneel down and declare that is your darkest hour. A 1 mana enchantment that makes every creature into a black colored creature on top of their other colors. This now means every spirit you make is both black and white, letting you sacrifice them to remove your opponent's creatures while also getting the death trigger to make more spirits from Teysa. This is a pure mid-range combo. It doesn't automatically kill any of your opponents, it just tells them that a type of permanent is almost entirely useless. Of course, Darkest Hour can give you the outs you need to win the game. Any other death trigger like Blood Artist will watch the spirits come and go, and drain your opponents for 3 life every time you remove another creature. Blasting Station turns into infinite damage since whenever you sacrifice a spirit, you make a spirit, while Phyrexian Altar gives you a source of infinite mana, a resource that most any deck can win with one way or another. Darkest Hour and Teysa or Zov Scion is one of those cases of fairly solid commander having the opportunity to be completely oppressive for your opponents. But if you go check a resource like EDHREC, then you'll see that Teysa or Zov Scion may be the original, but she is far from the most loved. Teysa Karlov, the least impressively named of our Banker Queens, but the one who's both the most fun to build around and the one who most easily breaks the backs of your opponents in the most ways. Teysa Karlov is both a tokens card and an aristocrats card, and to explain why these two elements go hand in hand, let's dive a little deeper into what aristocrats is as a deck archetype. Aristocrats is a deck that was originally named by cards like Falconwrath Aristocrat and Cartel Aristocrat, cards with an instant speed ability that doesn't cost mana and lets you sacrifice other creatures. Teysa or Zov Scion is one of these sacrifice outlets, or sac outlets as I'll be shortening it to. The point of these decks is to put in as many creatures with positive effects on death to synergize with effects that take hold when something dies. Blood Artist is the poster child of effects like these, killing your opponents as you carefully and precisely manage what dies and when. Pawn of Ulamog and Sifter of Skulls make tokens whenever something dies, those tokens also producing mana and giving the decks greater versatility. Cards like Reaper of the Wilds is both a solid creature but also provides decks like this with greater consistency since it scries whenever a creature dies. Combine this with the sack outlet of Viscera Seer, and you can find the pieces you need to finish off a game very easily. Then you get what kinds of creatures are best to sacrifice. Ikoria having 2 premier examples of this, with Serrated Scorpion dealing damage to your opponent every time it comes and goes from the battlefield, while Garrison Cap provides you with an additional creature when it dies, letting you sacrifice both it and then the token for maximum value. Which then brings us back to Teysa Karlov. 4 mana for a 2/4 is once again not the most impressive card, although it's relevant that she can't be hit by the most efficient red removal, aka does not die to Lightning Bolt. This is important because the longer she's on board, the harder it is for your opponents to try and catch up. Every time a creature dies and causes an effect to trigger, each of those effects trigger an additional time. Your opponent's losing another life to Blood Artist, making another token off the Pawn of Ulamog, looking deeper into your deck off of Reaper of the Wilds, or, the mono black version, Shadows of the Past. If you want to touch on what makes this so powerful a commander archetype, then you need to talk about the Edict effects, specifically Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos, cards that make your opponents sacrifice a creature they control every time one of yours dies. You then combine that with Grim Horror Specs, a creature who draws you cards whenever something you control dies, and suddenly even without Teysa, the deck can run circles around its opponents. With Teysa, you're able to actively gain tokens from all your creatures like Garrison Cat, even if you hold up sacrificing them to disrupt your opponents through your Edict effects. And by making those tokens have Vigilance and Lifelink, you can pull further and further out of reach while making potentially zero cost attacks. Teysa Karlov is one of those cards that works on every level that an archetype wants it to. And if it's true we won't be seeing Ravnica again, then she was perhaps the best send-off the Orzhov and their manipulation of both life and death could have gotten. These two both suffer from certain weaknesses, though. Specifically, Graveyard Hate that limits how much you can abuse your creatures over and over again. Graveyard Hate like Leyline of the Void and Kalida's Trader of Get, even making it so your death triggers never happen in the first place. That specific element is what tends to make Aristocrats such a hard deck to make work in formats like Pioneer and Modern. A single card from your opponent's sideboard and everything you're supposed to be doing is stopped before it ever got moving. White can obviously handle enchantments, and one of the things I like most about Black-White as a color combination is that it has incredibly versatile removal. Mortify can handle most problematic cards an opponent would be playing against a deck like this. Anguished on making Utter End and Vindicate, guaranteeing that your opponents can't feel too secure even when you have to look through 100 cards to find one of your removal spells for the answer they think they've provided. Teysa Orzhov Scion works especially well alongside removal spells that also require sacrificing creatures such as Final Payment or Bone Splinters, since even when you don't have a premier creature to sacrifice for it, you can still more often than not end a Spirit from her static ability. This wealth of removal and the variety of different effects I've already discussed amongst the creatures these decks play are a huge part of why this archetype is so well loved. Its mid game is incredibly strong and helps it get established before valuing your opponents out of the game. Most of what I've talked about, though, is something that Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, doesn't have. The black sheep of the group, her mana cost is the other two combined. A 7 mana 4/4 that doesn't strike fear in most players' hearts, even if creatures bow down before her. Vigilance makes her capable of attacking and blocking, protection from creatures meaning that she stops the largest of beasts in their tracks and becomes a clock for whomever has earned your displeasure. But at 7 mana, there are cards that present a significantly better clock than her. This is when I've turned to the rest of the text boxes for the other two, but this ability is a little more suspect than the others. Envoy of Ghosts is the Teysa that most people don't take as seriously, who doesn't have a combo, who struggles to finish a game, who people talk about as only good in X deck, but that you could be using someone else. This is also the Teysa that when I built a deck around her gave me and my commander play group the most fun, and yeah, this video was also inspired by wanting to talk about a very underrated commander in my opinion. Teysa is a wonderful politics card. She is by far the most casual of the three. When I sit down at the table with her, I also bring a pen and paper, tallying who does and doesn't attack me, who's got debt to pay and who's been generous. I typically play her with a heavy removal package alongside just as much life gain, making myself an uninteresting attack target in the early game and hard to bring down all at once in the late game. And not being able to kill Envoy of Ghosts in one go is a big deal. The rest of her text kills any creature that touches your life total and reaps the spirits from the impudent fools. Anyone playing goad spells, or if you play some of the very old cards that lets white force creatures into attacking or dying, those create situations that let you further manipulate the combat step, making players pick between trying to reduce your life total or denying you the spirits you could be getting. Because she can block with impunity, you're also able to play more of the politics cards or more restricted wrath effects that most decks can't, such as Divine Reckoning or Cataclysmic Gearhulk. But remember how I mentioned that tally I keep during the games? Someone in good standing can talk me into holding off on a wrath, pleading that my life total will keep me safe while they remove a sinner from the game instead. This is one of the few commanders I've ever played with that allowed for that kind of inherent politics that didn't come down to, that person is the most dangerous, let's all gang up on them. I know that I've described best case, casual kind of game here, but I feel like that goes underappreciated sometimes when the discussion around a card is so focused on how broken it can be, instead of how much play space it can make for you and the other players at the table. And this may very well end up being the legacy of Teysa. Head of the Orzhov, high synergy, manipulator of creatures, and generally fun cards. Competitive in her own standard at least once, a beloved commander, and now a pillar for an archetype. That's a pretty fine legacy, and she is one of my favorite send-ups in what may be the final Ravnica block because of it. If you'd like, you can let me know all about your favorite guild heads in the comments below. Niv and Rakdos are the only other two who could get videos like this, but who knows? Maybe someday I'll tackle those two power runes and do a proper penance walk for not talking about the Ghost Council this entire video. If you enjoyed this focus on the figurehead of the Orzhov power structure, then don't forget to leave a like, and if you enjoyed my attempt at acknowledging the strength she's given her colors, maybe think about subscribing. Lots of similar card valuation coming in the future. No matter what though, pay your debts. Wear what makes you happy, beware the politique. And practice good habits, everybody. Athreos, by the way. it was an Athreos commander deck that I built. It was mostly just Wrath of Gods, some full-on cleanse effects, and enchantments that made tokens or had effects when things died. I didn't know what I was doing, I just liked how the Theros gods looked to play with.